I'd like to introduce this incredible list of NFT artists, starting with Ovie, primarily known as OSF, Abigail, Esmay, Tom, and Patrick. Please give them a warm welcome and round of applause. Thank you.
Go for it. It's okay. I'll do introductions. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we have a stacked panel here of representation of artists and great figures in this space. So getting started, my name is Abigail Miller, and I'm the Associate Director at Unit London. But right next to me, I have Tom Martin Davies, who has been in this space and working with AR specifically for the last 3 years and have entered this in 2021. And has been working on various projects and amazing artwork. We have Esmay Luck-Hille, who is the Senior Marketing Manager here at Super Rare, and who has also a master's, I believe, from Oxford in art history. So she has been working in the space, both Web3 and a tenant of art for a very long time. Then we have Ovie Faruq, who is the artist and co-founder of Canary Labs, RecGuy, and Degens, also better known as OSF, and is a crypto artist, collector, and co-founder of multiple NFT projects. Then we have Patrick Amadon, who is an artist based in Los Angeles, specifically a glitch artist and one of the highest selling super rare artists, and has been in this digital art space since 2012. So getting started here with jumping straight into it with the first question I want to ask, and we can just go down the line and add anything that I missed as well, is what do you think is the most important aspects an artist needs to succeed in Web3 and NFTs? Tom, we'll start with you.
That's a really big question. What is the key ingredient? I mean, I guess initially it's going to be passion and a very creative drive to want to be an artist, because that will underlie everything that you're going to then try and create. And obviously NFTs are a medium in themselves that you can apply your artwork to. So yeah, initially it's obviously having that drive, that passion to create, but also to be innovative and put your work into different mediums and ways of expressing yourself. So yeah, that's a starting point.
I'd say another thing would be storytelling. So I feel like the NFT space has created an amazing opportunity for artists to be sovereign, which, you know, is great because they're fully in control. But also, you know, in the traditional world, there were a lot of other players that, yes, did take a cut, but they also helped tell their stories through curation and promotion. So that now also falls on the artist, and I think it's really hard to do everything. But if you can find a way to do some of those things, so with curation, it's storytelling. So really channeling what your art stands for and telling that story as much as you can to collectors, whether it's, you know, making sure that you've got, you know, an artist bio and a mission statement, or on your tweets, you're explaining as well what your art is and how it all plays together and what you stand for. So that really helps people kind of understand and connect more to your work as well.
Hey, everyone. Is it on? Yeah. I think, for me, one of the most important things is to understand what NFTs are, understand how they differ from the traditional art world, and understand what people who collect NFTs are looking for. And look, let's be honest, like the guy that goes out there and buys a piece of crypto art on Super Rare, or buys a Bored Ape, or buys a CryptoPunk, is not always the same as the guy that goes out there and buys like a Basquiat or goes and bids in the Sotheby's auction. There is actually a big difference in that. How many traditional art collectors are collecting NFTs? How many NFT collectors are collecting traditional art? Of course, there is some crossover, but that crossover is actually pretty small in my opinion. And that's not for no reason. Like, I think like people who want to buy NFTs are looking for specific things and certain things, and it may not be the same as the traditional art world. I think having an understanding of that, an understanding of what goes on inside an NFT collector or an NFT degens mindset is very important, and how you market your work. You know, not necessarily the content of it, but how you market it, how you use the technology, things like tokenomics, like different auction mechanics, differing the metadata, making it dynamic. Like, applying the technology to your NFT to make it like, this is an NFT, it's not just a piece of art that I put on blockchain, I think is the most important thing, and that comes from having an understanding of how NFTs truly work.
All right, let's see. I should have brought a respirator and a hoodie, otherwise it'd make it a little easier to identify me. So I think, I'm gonna go with something counterintuitive here. I think the art is secondary in becoming a successful artist. I think what a lot of people don't understand coming to space is how important community is. It is a very close, tight-knit community in the space right now. And so much of how you succeed is by making friends, finding groups of people that you get along with, and just really developing your presence within the community. You see a lot of people come in with all kinds of credentials from the outside and they don't find success. You see traditional artists come and fall flat. Just understanding that we are really a community first, that is the thing. And then, you know, it helps to have good art, right? But just appreciate that it's a community. You want to come in, you want to just find your place, and you want to just find people to get along with and start from there.
Yeah, I think with the word community, we were talking about this just before the panel, it's almost as well as become a buzzword. And there's a lot of other words synonymous with that. What are tools that artists need to cultivate a community or understand this Web3 mindset more than like if they're coming from a traditional background or just getting started?
Community for me is a tricky one because I'm a bit of an introvert and I'm quite, I'm not one to jump on the spaces and stuff. But I think, going on Twitter Spaces, going to these events and meeting people, meeting like-minded people, I tend to rely on kind of content marketing in the sense of letting my work spread organically throughout kind of viewers. So I specifically use augmented reality to create a lot of my work and play around with 3D in augmented reality. And it's a really under-tapped resource in terms of marketing, because you can get millions of views on your work without paying any ad dollars, just by going to TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and creating an AR effect. So in terms of kind of helping, not necessarily building the community, but expanding awareness of what you're creating, that's a useful tip.
Yeah, absolutely. I also feel like, everyone is on Twitter. That's, if you're an artist in the space, you've got to make a Twitter account. And that's just kind of the way it is, really. And then using Twitter in a sense that, you can be part of these communities and make friends, and that means getting on Twitter Spaces or just supporting other artists. Retweets, sharing, DMing other artists that you feel an affinity to. Keeping it authentic is always important. You want to support artists that you align with, or you just really admire. That makes sense. I think people can see ulterior motives very easily. So yeah, keeping it authentic, making sure you're on Twitter, as well as there are also other ways to build community. If you have existing collectors, using the NFT technology, like Ovie was saying, you can airdrop your collectors certain things. You can use token gating to token gate experiences, or certain Discord channels to give extra experiences to the people that are supporting you the most, or that are part of your community in some way. So as well as Twitter, using the technology as well.
It's funny you mentioned Twitter, because I literally never used Twitter ever in my life until I entered the whole NFT world, and now it's like the #1 battery drainer on my phone. So I would actually expand your point on the tech thing again with regard to community. Like, let's say you sell an edition of 100 pieces, right? And you may not have any information about your buyers. You may not know their name, you may not know their address, you may not know where they live or anything like that. But you do have their ETH address. You have 100 ETH addresses of all these different people who've minted your work, right? And that immediately gives you like some level of connectivity to your buyers in a decentralized way that allows you to interact with them and develop this community without having to necessarily be like, oh, like here I am on Twitter and here's this Discord and here I am trying to be like this super social person. You have 100 ETH addresses, you can do whatever you want with them. As you mentioned, like you can like airdrop them pieces of art. You can have them included on allow list to future drops or additions. You can gamify it and add raffles to it. But all those things, it gives people this feeling of value of like, oh wow, like this ETH address that I own bought this piece of art, and now this has some value because it gives me access to all these other things. I think access is the key thing. And that in itself, like, it helps build and develop communities. And look, some of like the best NFT projects, and we just step away from the art for 1 second, but some of the best collectible projects that are out there that exist have come from like no one person out there trying to create a community. It's happened organically with a bunch of people getting together. And the same thing I think can happen in the art world, just using the basic technology there is to be used.
I think these are all really good points. We like Twitter. Nobody cares about Instagram. Just embrace it. It is what it is. Sorry. And I think we conflate the idea of community a lot. We're not all in the JPEG monkey casino. Like, there's a whole other side of the NFT world that is wonderful and beautiful. And I think understanding the ethos of that side of it, understanding how we appreciate decentralization, understanding how we appreciate just the destruction of a lot of the traditional gatekeepers that have kept the majority of the space from being able to participate meaningfully in the art world. You look at people around the world who are able to make a living making art now, whereas that was not possible before because not everyone can have a Yale MFA and 3 cousins that are in the space. So I think the people that embrace the ethos and understand kind of what we're trying to do and kind of the better angels of the space typically have much better success and then connect more meaningfully in the space. So that's the community that I'm interested in. Everything else is a bit of a distraction, I think, for the outside world, and I think it kind of derails a little bit about what we're trying to do and confuses people. So I think just understanding that there are different types of communities within the space will help, I think, bring a little more clarity to people trying to get in and actually have an enjoyable and meaningful time here.
Yeah, and just to that point, I mean, keeping it authentic, it then becomes easy to market yourself, because if you're genuinely interested in that, you know, community ethos, then it becomes easy to be part of the conversation, easy to support other people in the space, rather than, you know, trying and working so hard to market yourself. You're kind of doing something very authentic to you that hopefully ties in with, you know, your art that you're making as well.
Definitely. I think one of the hard aspects of being in a decentralized space is artists are almost expected to be everything. They're expected to be amazing artists, which is already like a full-time passion, as well as a marketer, a dealer, a curator. What are some tips and tools you guys have learned to manage all of that? Because I think that's one of the biggest questions is, how do you enter the space when there's almost too much information, too much happening, and you now have to work 100 hours a week?
Yeah, it can get really overwhelming, especially with how quickly the space moves. I don't have particular tips on how to do everything, but maybe that is the point, is try to be a bit more intentional and specific with where you're putting your attention. I've joined, you know, at the beginning I joined like 50 Discords, and straight away Discord became a nightmare, and I had to just focus on a handful of projects I was interested in. And I think it's the same when you're creating as well and engaging with people. So for me, it's like, what kind of artist do you want to be? Because NFTs kind of then even streamlines that down to, do you want to be a 10K artist or a one-of-one artist? Or do you want to work with a team building a project? Do you want to be commissioned for your work for musicians or whatever? So you can kind of narrow down where you want to focus and who you want to engage with, even more granularly than, say, just being an artist, you know?
I think you just gotta be yourself, really, haven't you? I think you just gotta have an idea of like the stuff that you want to do, whether it's the content of what you're creating, whether it's like the quantity or supply, whether it's like the projects that you want to collaborate with, if they reflect the stuff that you're interested in, not interested in. I think you just have to have an idea of like, this is what I actually want to do, and this is what I'm going to go out there and do, regardless of what other people say. And I think one of the things about this space is because of like all these things we've said about community and like interaction, and it's like all very out there and open and public, you do get a lot of people like requesting things or demanding things, or like, oh, I'm not happy the price of this went down, or like, oh, this sucks, like, why didn't I get to mint this? Why am I not on the allow list? You get a lot of these demands, but I think you just have to basically ignore them and basically trust yourself that you're out there with a strategy that you truly believe in and that that works for you, and just go out there and do your thing. And I think the more that you go out there doing your own thing that is true to yourself, the more people eventually start to respect that, and the demands start to kind of like subside, I would say.
Yeah, and to that point, like, imagine who you are as a collector as well. And you see a lot of artists in the space also collecting other people's work. And I think what that also does is shifts the artist mindset to like, oh, this person's doing something really interesting. Like, I'm really drawn to that as a collector. Oh, maybe I should do something similar, and then I could do this, and then I could do this. And thinking from a collector's mindset when you're also setting these things up, just to help you kind of channel your authentic self into something that that people would want to buy into, or in however you're setting it up.
I think that's spot on. Again, you mentioned authenticity before. I think authenticity is 100% the way to go, along with intentionality. It is a full-time thing to do this well. It is incredibly difficult to kind of get critical velocity if you have one foot in and you're trying to make it work so you can quit the other thing that you're doing. I know it's a challenge for a lot of people getting started. Just whatever you can do to survive long enough, it is a full-time thing, and I feel like there's no way around that, because you have to, again, you're not paying the gallery fees that we all know about, but at the same time, you're also doing all of their work. So, it's not as cut and dry as I think a lot of people talk about it online. I mean, it does take a lot of time. So you just have to spend less time on Insta, on Twitter. Just, again, like, there's a million Discord communities you can join. I would say find a couple that you can go deep in. There's just not enough time to just be broad about it, and be authentic. Don't chase derivatives. Don't chase what's popular. Do your own thing, and then be patient. If you put the work in, if you're being authentic, doing your own work, people will come around. It just will be an indeterminate amount of time, but just stick with it.
Yeah, and to that point, one thing, I mentor on the vertical crypto art residency, and I always start my session with I'm in marketing, so I start with quite a marketing-based principle, and it's hard because artists typically don't. I've been an artist for 10 years. I really didn't want to think about myself as as a brand. So it's more thinking about yourself as what you stand for, and in marketing we call it like brand pillars. So you just work out what those 3 to 5 things are that you stand for, because it really helps you channel and be authentic and be intentional, because you're aware of the story that you want to tell, and just really honing in on those things can give you clarity and structure around any project that you want to do.
Definitely. I think also on this panel, we've all reached like a level of success in this space, which can be daunting to a lot of people. And specifically for the artists, and we'll circle back to you, Esmay, what was like a shift once you reached that level of like, oh, this is happening, like how do I take it to the next scale? Like how do you scale up as an artist once you reach that level of success? It's not just like a single project that did well or one single sale. And then Esmay, specifically for you, how do you see artists making that shift as well once they reach that success from the super rare side?
Oh, which one do you want to start for?
Whoever wants to. I see Patrick right
Yeah,
now.
I'll go. I'd been making digital art for almost a decade before the NFT space. But I think one thing I thought about this and it worked out. When I got into this space, I spent 3 or 4 months kind of 12 to 14 hours a day, working on art, connecting with people in the space before I minted anything. I didn't want to just throw something out there, try to make some money on it, and try to move on to the next thing. I really wanted to get to know the community and become a part of the community before I minted anything. And because of that, I think it helped get that initial velocity when I did start minting. Again, just time in the community and relationships mean more than anything else.
I think also you got to be like, a lot of artists will get to this point of inflection where you start off, you're selling things, and it's like, it's going all right. And then maybe you get like one big sale or two big sales, and you start to get really excited. It's like, oh, great, like, I just sold this piece for like way more than I would have done in the traditional world. Let me like bang out some more pieces and sell as much as I can. I think people get a little bit overexcited. And I think when you get to that point where you're starting to have success, you enter like this new era or this new level where you start to attract different collectors. And it goes back to what Esmay was saying. You have to start thinking with a collector's mindset. Like, what are people looking for, where they want to buy some of these things? And one of the things is supply. And I think somewhere where a lot of people trip up is like, they do really well, they have like 2 or 3 big sales, and they'll just start minting like loads of pieces like every day. Not every day, I mean, that's pretty aggressive. But maybe like every week or 2 weeks, and it becomes a lot, then your supply starts to go up a lot, and then your sales price starts to go down. It's just a very basic supply and demand kind of thing. And then you never can like regain that magic that you initially created. And I think that's where a lot of people trip up. And when you recognize yourself, or you see yourself getting to like a higher level, you gotta start also like, you know, restricting some stuff and backing yourself a little bit, and maybe like, okay, I'm not gonna mint 3 pieces this month, I'm gonna mint one piece, but I'm gonna command a higher price for it, and I'm gonna wait for the right person and go out there and seek 3 or 4 people who want to buy it, rather than just selling 3 or 4 pieces to 3 or 4 people. So there is like, you know, as you said, like art is part of it, but I think there's a lot of business mechanics that you have to start thinking about when you get to that level, I would say.
Yeah, and I think another thing to touch on there would be kind of when you get to that level, you do have access to your collectors, and you know, you are that artist-collector relationship. There's no middleman to go through. So you can really hone in and talk to them, and you can kind of work out their mindset as well. And also, sometimes you just ask them straight out, like, what do you guys want to see from me? Like, this is what I'm working on. So there's a combination of kind of really building those connections with your core collectors, but also doubling down on your art as well and keeping focused on that. And you know, rarity, scarcity is also something you need to be mindful of 100%.
Well, I'm really glad you brought that up. The artist-collector relationship is very different in this space than the traditional world. I don't know anyone who collected my work in the traditional world. They vanish. But in this space, you have one-to-one relationships with your collectors, and as such, your collectors become your friends, they become your supporters, and much more important than the amount of money you get from selling a piece is finding the right collectors. The right collectors will help push your art career forward in a way that nothing else can in the space. So curate your collectors. I think it's one of the most important things you can do. So however you figure out how to do that, just find the right collectors and find the people that want to support you, and whatever amount of ETH it ends up being, like that's the relationship you want to pursue.
Yeah, I think that is really key with NFTs, and especially for technology, this ability to know your collectors. But the more you lean into NFTs and contracts, there's some ideas I've been playing around with where I create metaverse guitars, 3D guitars. But if you buy one, you can customize it yourself. So you can then contact me and I will update the visuals. And there's obviously a trust between collector and the creator, but it gives that kind of dynamic relationship between the artwork and the collector and the creator, and makes it more personal. And I think that kind of ability within NFTs and the technology is something that is going to be amazing in the future, just transformative in terms of how art works.
Perfect. We're coming up to our last couple of minutes, and I want to have one last question. This space moves so quickly. Like a year ago, we can't even recognize. You're saying it feels like 10 years ago. And in Web3, we don't necessarily know what it's going to look like in a year from now. So to end this conversation on, what are the biggest things you'd tell an artist for this upcoming year that might not have been like applicable last year that they need to know?
For me, I'm all about augmented reality, how 3D objects can be explored, whether it's a metaverse or kind of a game engine or AR, and obviously how you can then mint this to a chain and bring it across multiple platforms. So for me, it's about how we can experience art, and then being really mindful as to how you create that as well.
This is a really hard question. But one thing that springs to mind is, a lot of artists in the space started when, we were in a different market conditions. And definitely in crypto art, it feels like, yes, we're in, a bear market, but continuing to build now and continuing to create work, despite those market conditions, you can still work through that. So I guess perseverance, even whatever's going on at the time. Obviously, you have to make it work for your, life and lifestyle, but continuing despite those things and not being kind of put off and giving up.
I would say get creative about how to actually create the mechanics around selling your work. It doesn't have to be like, hey, I'm into the piece of work and I'm just listing it for sale or I'm listing it for auction. There's been a lot of people who've had some decent sales with creative ways to incentivize people to bid using the technology. So, think outside the box, find different ways to get your art up there to sell. That's not just hey, here's an auction or here's a listing.
I would say there's so few signals to tell people about you in the space that tiny things carry disproportionate amounts of weight when it comes to judging and assessing artists and people and their motives and so forth in the space. Bearing that in mind, right, we're in crypto winter, right? It's harder for artists, much more so than it was last year. But at the same time, if you come into this space now and you start building and creating and becoming a part of the community during the down period, I feel like it does address in a nice way, are you here to make money or are you here to make art? Right, so I think that building right now and building relationships now will have you get kind of the double benefit, right? I think you'll be more trustworthy when things do open back up again. So I think now is always a great time to start, but now is especially a great time to start right now. So yeah, and if you have questions too, DM me on Twitter. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. So feel free to reach out.
Careful what you wish for.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much to our panelists today. So
Thank you.